it.
All right, it looks like on this side like we're live. Let me go and check on the YouTube side. Looks good.
Yeah, should I also be participating on the YouTube side?
No, so we actually we turn off comments there. Or, sorry,
Okay.
we turn off the live chat there and route everybody to the changelog Slack, and we can monitor that. There's no need for you to be worrying about it. But hello, live listeners, and I checked that that's good. Nick, you let me know. I'll hit the start.
Okay. Yeah, let me just bring up my tiny stopwatch.
I mean, we do have a TIL media, so when we get to that section, just cue me and I'll play that as well.
Oh, good. Cool. And then, okay, so yeah, we're going to go, what we like to try and do is do like 15 to 20 minute segments where we kind of try and break at that time and we can go, get water or whatever we need right then, but just as like a natural break point for ad insertion later. And we try and do 3 of those, and that is pretty much it. If we talk over each other, you've done podcasts, so I'm sure you know, but just start over and we can kind of cut that out to make us sound smarter.
Sure.
We have a natural conversation, but we'll talk over each other a lot, I'm sure. Yeah. Anything I'm forgetting, KBall?
No, I don't think so. Just, yeah, the outline is only a suggestion.
Oh, yeah. Which is why there's never much in it.
Yeah, if we get off on some tangent, often those are the best conversations. So.
Yeah.
All right. Shall I kick it off with the intro?
Yeah, let's do it. Hoy hoy, welcome to JS Party. I'm your host this week, Nick. Hoy hoy again. Welcome to a special, for me, birthday edition of JS Party. And I'm joined today by KBall. KBall, what's up?
Hey, happy birthday. I didn't realize.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, I woke up early, ordered an iPhone, and then had a refrigerator appointment, and now I need a new refrigerator. So, yeah. I get a refrigerator for my birthday.
Can only go up from there, right? So
right.
This should be good.
Yeah, welcome. And we also have another exciting guest. First time guest with us today is Austin Gill. Austin, what's up?
Boop, boop, boop. What's up? It is your birthday.
It is.
I saw your tweet. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I don't know. I just got hit right before this with the refrigerator news, and I'm not excited about it. But my refrigerator doesn't run JavaScript, so we don't have to talk about that anymore.
Are you sure? That might be why it's gone down.
That is true, probably.
Yeah. Now you get the opportunity to upgrade to a refrigerator that does run JavaScript.
That's true. They do have ones with screens now. I'm sure that's probably.
Oh, wait, are you going to get a surveillance refrigerator?
I hope not. No.
Okay, because like they try to sell it to you. Oh, smart this and smart that, and every time I'm like, why would I want a surveillance this and a surveillance that? Like, I don't want Amazon in my house.
I don't even let my TVs be on the internet. Like, I have a third-party box that like streaming stuff goes through instead, because I just don't trust them. But we're going to talk about stuff like that, like your TV, not necessarily your TV capturing your video, but maybe other things. But first, Austin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Austin Gill. I have been building websites for, I don't know, like 10 years. And I started in agency work, which was a lot of fun doing WordPress stuff, which I always advise to people to do a little bit of everything. Like the agency work is really cool because you can really hone the process of doing the same sort of projects over and over and just like get it better and better. And it's fun to do that. And then I also did some product work for several years, and that's interesting because you kind of get to go in a more vertical direction. And the problems never go away. They just get harder and harder. But then you also have to deal with like technical debt a little bit more and yeah, stuff that gets swept under the rugs. But yeah, it was all throughout that time. I've been kind of doing open source work and writing blogs and creating content out there. And I don't know why it took me so long, but I realized that I might actually get paid to do it by doing developer advocacy. So I am doing that now for Akamai, which is an excellent company. And we recently acquired Linode, which has been a lot of fun for my work. Yeah, so that's me. Yeah, and I actually have a little bit of a history with KBall, which is fun and interesting. I don't know, maybe KBall can take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking back. So, many listeners know I used to publish a newsletter, and you were, I think, possibly the most engaged subscriber of my newsletter, both in terms of responding back to me, but also, sending me articles, sending me feedback, all sorts of stuff, which I always appreciated. But I was looking back through my email. And the first email exchange that we had was around San Diego JavaScript or San Diego JS, which I'm kind of curious. At the time, you, I think, had recently with organizing there, and you were kind of looking at history and discovered that I had been one of the people who started it up. But are you still engaged with them? What's going on there?
Yeah, so the San Diego JS community is cool. I've moved from San Diego since then, and over the course of the pandemic, it was hard for a lot of meetup organizers to, figure out what they're doing and make sure that the community is healthy, but also making sure that I don't know, it just took a lot of wind out of the sails. So I went from an attendee to an organizer, and then eventually joined the board of directors because it is a nonprofit organization, as you would know. And
that post dates me, by the way.
Oh, really?
It got more. Yeah, one of the really fun things for me about San Diego JS is how it basically started as a, hey, we should have a JavaScript meetup. Why don't we have a JavaScript meetup? And everybody said, yeah, we should have a JavaScript meetup. Why don't we have a JavaScript meetup? Until I said, well, okay, let's start a JavaScript meetup. And we were just starting, basically squatting for space in different people's places. And we started off, I think we were hosting in a co-working spot where I had a membership and all these things. So it was very guerrilla style, like no formalities. I just ran things and found speakers. Patrick helped me with some organizational, and like mostly he was running San Diego JS. So he was like, here's what you need to do. You need to make sure you do this and this and this. But then we started like handing it off to people, and each set of person who was running it expanded it and said, okay, well, now that we're going to have two people, coordinating it more. Now we're going to add this. Now we're going to, put this process in place. I actually did not know that it was formally a nonprofit now, but that's great. But it's one of those fun, like catch lightning in a bottle things. Cause I think it was 2011 or something when I started it. And not that long after, JavaScript started just going haywire, and that site or that group blew up to be one of the largest tech communities in San Diego. And yeah, it's crazy. But no, I had no idea that they were a nonprofit now, and that there was like that formal piece of it.
Yeah. So shout out to SDJS. And honestly, I could go on and on. I know this is not the topic that we were going to discuss, but the community stuff and meetups and organizing, it's so cool because it was so instrumental in my career early on as just an attendee. A great place to, if you want to build your network or potentially get hired, going to meetups and talking and networking and making friends, it's awesome. And I wish that we could come up with a good template for other meetup organizers, because I think that San Diego JS just had something really special in that. Before the pandemic, it was the largest tech meetup in San Diego, which is a large city, and we had I think 8 events a month. So every week there was 2 events going on, and I think that just the way that grew, like you said, was with people stepping up and wanting to say like, hey, there's no Vue specific meetup in San Diego, and we would like to do that. And as organizers, we're like, cool, you want to do that? You're in charge. And really just the community stepping up and owning that sort of leadership and making it happen. And sometimes things fell out and whatever, but it was it was a good way that you could sort of scale up the organization and give people what they want and give back to the community. And it was great. I loved it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't been involved with, a tiny meetup like SDJS, but I have run Nebraska JS, and I'm sure we're much, much bigger.
Yeah.
But no, we face the same problems. One of my goals is to not let it just die under me, because the pandemic kind of just took all the wind out of the sails. As you mentioned, we had one meetup during the whole thing on Zoom, and it was good, like a good topic and a good speaker. But just finding people to contribute online to that is so much harder than it is in person. And I really want to bring it back, because I think that it's important for the community, because it helped me so much in my early career, and it'd be a shame for meetups like that to not exist anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, the pandemic was hard. I mean, on one hand, the digital meetups are great because you can reach a larger audience for people that maybe couldn't attend for geographical or financial reasons before, and now they can, and there's so much more content available. But it is, I think, different strokes for different folks. Like for me, the in-person stuff was just so good and very energizing for my career.
Agreed.
So it seems to be coming back a bit, and we'll see what the future looks like.
Yeah. And kind of along those, like, those kind of meetups don't have to be like tied to geography really anymore. And I've seen some really vibrant and really active Discord communities that are just, constantly, I can't even keep up with Discord. I like how many channels are in there and all of that. But then there's like, you can live stream in like within Discord, or like hybrid between that and Twitch and other things. And it's just a nice, easy way to like have no barrier to entry, regardless of where you live, to get in on that. And it's just really cool.
Yeah, I feel like I face the same thing when it comes to conferences, right? Like, there's a lot of really cool stuff about digital conferences and the low barriers and all of that, and I still don't do any of them. And I'm still remote myself. Like, I'm in video calls all day anyway. I don't want to do that more for fun and to really, like, I go to a conference to get into a different mental and physical space, and like, more video calls doesn't do it for me.
Exactly. And honestly, when I go to a conference, I don't go to the talks. Like, I'll watch them later.
Yeah. Well, and for meetups are an interesting example too, because you talk about the networking, right? So like, back when we started it, we had 2 sessions a month. So 8 is phenomenal. We had 2. One was talks, and one was a hack together. And the hack together was so much more fun and valuable in some ways, because it was like, okay, we're just jamming in space. We're hanging out. Oh, you're working on a cool project here. Let me see. And it was also, asterisk for meetup organizers in there. It's a great hack to find talks, because if you're the meetup organizer, you go around the hack day and you're like, what are you working on? Hey, that's really cool. You want to give a talk about that? And most engineers, like, if you just say abstractly, do you want to give a talk at my meetup? They're going to be like, what would I talk about? I don't know. No. But if they're working on a cool project and you're like, yeah, I love your project, tell me more about it. Okay, I bet other people would be interested. Can you just tell them? It could be 5 minutes, no big deal. Like, suddenly the barriers are lower, and you get a much wider range of folks coming and talking at your more talk focused meetup. So it's a fun way to do it. And of course, the after, I mean, this has pros and cons as well, but the after meetup, go out for pizza and beer or whatever it might be, was another just great way to connect as human beings and network and build those networks.
Yeah, I mean, I think the networking term, or the term networking, kind of has like a negative connotation to it, but there's just, it's professional networking, and it's also social networking. Like, I made so many friends that would just come and hang out at my house and play board games and stuff. And, I don't know, in the larger scheme of this like potential loneliness pandemic that people are facing, like, just getting out and doing things that you're interested in with other people that are interested in the same things, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah, networking completely. I used to have this big barrier. I was like, networking, I'm not good at it. I don't like it. What is it? But then I changed my mind around when I realized that networking just means talking to people, and talking to people who are interested in the same type of stuff you're interested in. That's it. As a software developer, you go to a meetup, you talk to people about software. That's networking. Congratulations. The next time you need a job, you go to those people you talk to and say, hey, is your company hiring? I'm kind of looking around. And they like you, you like them. They'll say, yeah, come on over, come interview.
Yeah. And honestly, giving a talk meetup or conference or whatever, it's one of the best hacks to advancing your career, because for that span of time that you are on stage or at the podium or whatever, you are the expert in the room, and you may not feel that way. Like, I know we all deal with imposter syndrome, and there's definitely, I wonder why I'm the guy with the microphone when I know that there's at least half of the people in the audience that probably are going to be able to correct me and come up to me after my talk and say, actually, and that's fine, because they didn't apply or whatever. You're the one with the mic, and you kind of get that spotlight on you. And I think that some people don't like to be in the spotlight, but for those of you that are thinking about it or considering it, it really is such a good way to just build your credibility and have something to point to and say, I know what I'm talking about. And in fact, most people will actually come to you. So.
That exactly. It's even more of a networking hack, because now you not only do you not have to worry about finding people with interesting things to talk about. You don't even have to figure out what to talk about or who to reach out to. They'll come to you. They want to talk to you about the thing you talked about. It's a great approach.
Yeah. And it's good to give back too. Like, I love teaching people and mentoring, and it's great.
Yeah. And kind of speaking of that, Austin, is it my understanding that you also do like live streaming of coding? Like, do you do that as well?
Yeah. So let's see. The content that I'm creating these days, I have a podcast. I do live stream once a week now on Twitch, and it's fun. I mean, I'm trying to get more people to come and make it like a collaborative live stream thing, and just like, let's hack together, and the live streaming stuff it's really weird, because you go from, I don't know, like, if you go from creating scripted content or even like blog post written content, there's like a formula to honing it and like crafting it and then coming up with a final product that is coherent. And with live streaming, a lot of the time you're just like off the cuff, nothing's prepared. I mean, if you ever see someone that live streams on a presentation and they upgraded their dependencies the night before, or the Wi-Fi goes down and there's just like scrambling, think of that, but over the course of the entire time, and you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. There's people that are on the show that are like in the chat that are correcting me, and it's stressful. And it's so weird, because live streaming it becomes less about the content and more about the performance or the community that you're building,
Mm-hmm.
So it's really strange, but it's also rewarding, because as transitioning into developer advocacy, they don't tell you how little you actually code. And, I got into coding because I love it. So It's been hard to see that shift in the time and focus, but it's fun. I like it.
Yeah. No, it seems fun. I've tried it once without telling anyone, just like, could I set this up on Twitch and get it going? And I didn't have anybody actually listening or participating, but like, I was thinking about that, and I just feel like, how could you possibly be trying to do something while paying attention to the chat and interacting with them while you're Googling the parameters to reduce for the 400th time? Like, that's how I would be. Like, it'd just be so difficult to focus on one thing or anything.
Yeah. It's not a conducive environment for getting actual work done.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So do you, like, not to see how the sausage is made or whatever the phrase is, but like, do you come with like, something that you want to do, and maybe, like, I feel like if I were going to do it, I'd be like, okay, I want to build this thing, and I will build it beforehand, and then I will try and redo it on a stream or something, just so I'm like, oh, but I won't hit that roadblock live and fail live.
Yeah.
Is that like a trick to the streaming setup, or?
Yeah, I've done both. And again, I think it comes back to treating streaming as a different platform than some of these other platforms. Like, if you want to do video content that's like tutorial or really focused on teaching, then you kind of want to have more of a scripted approach and get to a final product before the video's over, obviously, and have those sorts of takeaways. And I think what I've learned with streaming is that again, it's sort of more of an entertainment show, and because it's live, you really benefit from having that unscripted, authentic experience. So some of the streams that I've done that have been more like successful or engaging, we actually didn't even make any progress. But then I've done some other streams where it's like, cool, I have a project that I've actually built out in my free time, and now we're going to walk through and like do this as more of a teaching thing. And that also works pretty well. And people are like, oh, it's cool. Or there's shows that are even, like Jason Langsdorff, he does Learn with Jason, and he's kind of not really engaging with the audience because he has a guest on and they're talking through this thing and building it out. So I don't know. I think either option works. What it comes down to is that folks like the authenticity of the person that's running the stream. And if you show up and you want to show up with like pre-designed content, do that, and the people will find you that are into that. And if you want to show up and just like stumble your way and babble around like I do, and people laugh at you because you're wearing green cat ear headphones, that works too.
Most of our listeners weren't going to know that until you said it.
Yeah, that's all right. Give them something for the imagination.
If you're hearing this in a podcast and you want to see, go to the live YouTube recording and you will see Austin's amazing green cat ear headphones.
They are amazing. All right, well, let's take a break right here, and we'll kick it off in the next section with another topic. So, KBall, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about with regards to...
I didn't have an agenda. I was just like, this might be an interesting direction.
Yeah. No, I thought it was great. That's an important piece.
Yeah, it's cool.
All right. So in the next section, do you want to do the TIL thing? KBall, do you have a TIL that you could talk about?
I can hit it. You want to just intro it and then I will hit the media? Or do you want me to just... Okay.
Yeah, I was just making sure that you have one too.
I'm ready with the media. Oh, do I have a TIL thing?
Yeah.
Something that I've learned. Good question. What have I learned recently that's actually like software?
I don't think it has to be just software.
Let me see. Well, it's not... all right, I have a topic that I'm mulling on. It's not a perfect TIL topic, but I will talk about it.
Okay. So I think I can go first to give you more time, KBall. And then I was thinking, Austin, you'd go last because we'll probably spend the most time talking about yours and kind of going deeper into that and hearing more of your perspective about it. So
Sure.
If that sounds good. Cool. All right.
That's the TIL media, and I clicked on it by accident. We're ready.
Okay.
When you intro us.
Okay. All right. Well, let's dig into another topic. And in this section, let's do some TILs, or Today I Learned.
I got a story that I'm going to tell. You're gonna love it, baby. Think it's swell. I only learned it today. The TIL.
I love that so much.
It's so great.
Okay, so I'll start off and I'll say that something that I learned, I think in the last show I brought up Obsidian and was talking about that amazing note-taking framework or note-taking application and some cool plugins that they have. Well, I've been looking at their plugin API and trying to write my own, which has been a lot of fun. It's all in TypeScript, which is just super easy. You can you clone a project and get running with it right away. It gives you an ES build script that will compile everything for you. You create a manifest and and then you can just load it into Obsidian and play with it. And I've been creating one that just makes it easier for me to work with GitHub links, because GitHub, copying like a pull request link and then putting it into my notes for later. just so that I can click on it again to like check the status of it or whatever. Like, it's just tedious. And so this will just let me type like GH colon and then like the repo and the PR number, and it will auto create a link for it right there and put a status on it just by hitting the GitHub API and checking all of that. So makes it really easy to like create more of a dashboard of what I'm working on right from within Obsidian. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've gotten the pieces all together, but nothing tangible, like as in it's doing exactly what I want, but I get the response from GitHub that I want. And I have made like some fake things to inject into the Obsidian renderer. And now it's just a matter of putting it all together, but I'm pretty excited about that. And so I guess that's the TIL is the Obsidian plugin API. It's really cool.
Nice.
I'm so curious about that because it's like the second brain thing, right? Where everything's
Yeah.
kind of connected and it looks cool.
It's amazing, and it's a big rabbit hole if you let it be. So
Yeah, it seems like it.
proceed with
Yes.
caution.
Yeah. Well, and I still haven't looked. The last episode we talked about it, and it might be the thing that pulls me off of Roam Research, which is a similar type of app, but is not extensible in the same way. So I still haven't had time to dig in. But next time I actually have a day where I'm not having to work or deal with kid stuff.
Yeah, this is my ongoing theme for the show. Is every time I'm on with KBall, I'm just gonna be like, Obsidian did this really cool thing. And yeah, just keep prodding at that.
Hey, it worked with TypeScript. You got me there
Yeah?
eventually. It only took like a year and a half. So, Obsidian, if you get it faster than that, like coming out ahead.
That's true. Yeah. And yeah, so Obsidian's cool. The plugin API is cool. KBall, have you learned something today or recently?
So I don't have something as nice and concrete as what you have, but I'm going to talk about a thing that I've been learning about and thinking about its connections. So the thing I've been learning about and thinking about is this concept of an OODA loop, which is OODA is OODA. It stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. This was originally developed in sort of the military world and is often used to talk about military strategy, but it's become, a concept that plays out in business and law enforcement and like operations research, things like that. And it, like at a very high level, if we think about it, it's like, okay, observe what's going on, orient yourself towards like what you might want to do about it, make a decision, and then act, and then loop back to, okay, observe based on your actions, things like that. So, okay, that's kind of interesting. But the thing I've been really noodling on recently is I realized that a lot of the things we do as engineers and other stuff could be modeled in this way. If you think about like the core like agile cycle, right? When you're thinking about, okay, I'm doing backlog grooming. I'm observing what's our situation. I'm estimating. We make decisions. Then we go and then we do a retro. Like it's I haven't mapped it perfectly, but like there's these different phases of it that in many ways potentially map to that same cycle. And so I started digging into this, and people have said you could do a similar thing for thinking about how you do scientific research, right? You're observing, you're sort of orienting with a model. You're going to make a hypothesis. That you're in that model, your decision is the hypothesis. You act by running an experiment to test that hypothesis and come back into this loop. And so, as I said, not very concrete yet, and I feel like I'm still like trying to wrap my head around it, but I'm starting to wonder if, like, there's been a ton of people like writing about and doing stuff in this OODA loop world. A lot of it military strategy related stuff, but thinking about like, can I do a bunch of learning in that area and sort of pull it into our work as engineers, and thinking about how do I manage a team of engineers? How do we set up our stuff? How do we continuously improve our process and get better and better at what we're doing? And yeah, that's about all I got. It's just kind of this, it's still a little nebulous in my head, but if you've never looked into OODA loops and thought about how that involves like how you're interacting in the world, and especially in like competitive games and things like that, super cool stuff.
I love this. I love things like this where it kind of gives you like the most basic framework of how to do something or how to think about something or how to approach something. It's just a fascinating way to try and like orient your thoughts to that, and then see where it takes you. It can really change how you think about something.
Yeah, I love frameworks. I'm totally a framework guy.
So does it give you like a framework around time to make decisions or act, like time within to act, and then you kind of do your like how to step away and actually get a perspective from which to observe? And, you know, because I feel like, I don't know, it sounds like a course correction technique that as humans we kind of do. But this is, it sounds like this might provide better tools to take yourself out of the human error prone side of things.
Yeah, so there's a couple of pieces from where I've gotten to right now. So first off, if you think about it in terms of in a competitive scenario, which doesn't really necessarily apply in the like engineering process world, but like they're talking about a military, or he was originally developing this with related to like fighter jets and fighting each other. There's advantages to shortening the length of the cycle. Like if you can make it around that cycle faster, you can learn faster, you can adjust faster. And many folks have taken that as being the primary thing of like, oh, you have to have your OODA loop be faster than your opponent's OODA loop. But there's also some interesting things about depending on where, if you start to observe where in the cycle different types of things can happen, and then you can intervene or act in ways where there's like a rhythm to it. So if you recognize, oh, my opponent seems to be working on this cycle, or they're doing these things, if I can find the right times when, okay, I'm going to get in something that's going to change the situation between their decision and their act loop. If I can time that perfectly, I'm going to F them up because they've made a decision, they've committed, they haven't seen the results of that action yet, and suddenly I'm changing the scenario out from under them. And so starting to think about like the rhythms of when do you do things, and then bringing this back into engineering, thinking about, okay, what is the right cycle time to make it around this cycle in a way that's going to be effective, right? If you try to do, I think, for example, in Agile, 1 week sprints are probably too tight. I think 1 week sprints, you don't get enough action to get useful feedback. And you end up spending too much of your time or overhead in the like decision analysis. But if you stretch it out to like a 2 week sprint, you actually get potentially 2 weeks might be the right rhythm, and it may also depend a little bit on team and other things. But so yeah, there's timing is a big piece of it, and the two aspects that I'm aware of that I'm thinking about right now are, one, like what is the natural time span for this, and what is the impact of shrinking versus expanding the time of your loop, and the other is what are you primed for at different parts of your loop, and what are you sensitive to, or what is disruptive in different parts of your loop. So actually in the engineering case, that is I'm just realizing this now, but like that's a big reason why you might not want to accept new work for this sprint in the middle of a sprint, because you're disrupting. You've already made your decisions, you've got people going, and if you try to change your priorities in between, which let me tell you, lots of people want to do, it messes you up. And so we're actually doing an experiment on my team at work right now where we have separated out the folks who have to do reactive work from those who are doing our ongoing planning work, because we were getting interruptions that have a tight turnaround. They're essentially 1 to 2 day customer facing, oh, this thing happened and we need something really quickly. And it was being super disruptive for folks. And so we've separated those folks out. Doing that now I'm like thinking about this as we go, right? But like if you're doing that sort of reactive work where stuff is coming in, you have to react to it, you need a really tight loop. You need, okay, here's this thing that came in, I gotta understand what's going on, act on it, and get that turned around all within the course of a day. Customer support roles are gonna have this, things like that. Whereas if you're trying to do something that's much larger, requires more architecture, things like that, you need a longer loop. Because if you do too tight with the loop, you're not going to be able to think about enough and perceive enough as you go. So I suspect there's mappings to like the different type of work you want to do and what are the natural cycle times, and then like how do those cycle times fit with each other, and do you have the same teams doing it or different teams, and how do they interface? Anyway, it still like feels like it's floating around in my head. It's not totally concrete, but I think it's super cool stuff.
So next week we're going to hear you announce your new side project where you just clone Jira, but you call sprints OODA loops instead?
Chances are no. But sometime in the next couple of months, I'll probably have some articles as I think through all of this stuff.
Right on.
Well, yeah, we'll stick around and keep a close eye so that we don't end up OODA the loop on that. That's terrible. I'm sorry.
That's so bad.
Womp womp.
Oh, as someone that really loves puns, that was oof.
Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Well, Austin, have you learned something recently?
Yeah. So
Change the
I
subject away from the pun.
yeah, nice save. I learned about this HTML attribute called capture, and I wrote a blog post about it and made a video and tweeted and all this stuff, and it kind of took off. And I think it'd be interesting to talk about the process of creating the content and what kind of happened, because it ended up sort of on the front page of Hacker News and all that, which is interesting. But the actual attribute itself is also worth talking about, hence the blog post. And it's kind of so if you have an HTML file input and you normally click that, it opens up this like file picker UI, and you can select one of the files or multiple files, and the file input gets that think like the binary data for that file. And but for mobile devices, you can actually make a better experience by setting the capture attribute on that file input, and you can set it to either user or environment. And depending on which selection, you can allow the user, or you can sort of have access to the user's camera, either the front facing or back facing camera and or microphone. And this is interesting because it really falls into the bucket of user experience. Because if you think like it's sort of like adding the what is that attribute that can say like what input type it is, the input mode, so that when a user, if they're putting in their social security number, you can have them be greeted with a number keypad instead of the full keyboard. It makes their life easier. This way, if you know that you're in a scenario that the user is going to be taking a photo, maybe it's like uploading something to to sell their product and they want to take a picture, right? Or upload a photo for their face. It might be easier to just have access to the camera right away instead of having to take a picture first, store it on the device, and then go to the file input, click it, and then search for the picture you just took and select it, right? So this was an interesting attribute that I was like, okay, cool. It's a like HTML brings up the camera, has access to the camera, and that's awesome. And it's not available on desktop devices for a number of reasons. But this was interesting because when I shared this, a lot of people responded with security concerns. So if you go to a website and the website uses like what we're on right now to record this, right? And you do a live stream, the browser is going to ask you, is it okay to access your camera? And with the HTML capture attribute, it actually does not. It just goes straight to the camera on the device. And people were like, oh, that's a security concern, because obviously if a website has access to the camera, they can take someone's photo without their permission, or maybe figure out things about their environment or background or stuff like that. And the interesting thing about this is, while that would be true if you did have permissionless access to the camera, I think the way that the attribute actually works is it opens up the camera, but the camera feed or stream is not available to the website. It's just going to open up the camera in the native camera, the native camera access on the phone, and then save that picture. I believe it gets saved to like a temporary file on the device. And then same as if you were to navigate through your folders and find the file that you want to upload to that input, it's just going to automate that process for you. So it was interesting and fascinating. I wrote about it, and it kind of like took off, in just getting a lot of attention, both, hey, this is cool, and whoa, this is scary. So, yeah.
So once that file is there, the website would have access to it?
Yes, but that's not really any different or more dangerous or whatever than if you just have a regular file input and it pops up the file picker UI and then the user selects that file, then the website has access to that file. So it still requires user interaction and
Right.
like a high level of user awareness to what's going on and decision making.
Yeah. In that post that you have a video of you demoing what it's actually doing, and you have to press the button to actually, like, you have to interact with it for the camera to actually come up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that like gives you kind of the, it's not just going to be like in the background reading your camera data or presumably your microphone data. It's just as soon as you like authorize it by pressing the button, then it's going to pop up and give you that. But it's going to give you just like the camera app, which will then feed the data that it captures back to the temporary file that it gives you access. And then presumably from there, you could use like a file reader API or something to read that data and like draw the picture to a canvas, right?
Yeah, of course. I don't think you could do, so if you captured a video, I don't think you could do like a live stream situation because that would require continuous access to the camera feed, which is not what this does. It just adds, access to the already captured file or saved file.
It reminds me a lot of the distinction between like opening a window based on user action versus not, right? Like you can't open a window from JavaScript unless you're inside of an event handler triggered by user action. And this is similar in that you're not asking for the same permissions because it's being triggered directly by user action.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's just like a really cool overlap of things that I'm interested is like the HTML becoming more and more powerful. And it's, HTML is kind of like the slowest moving web language in a good way. It's also like very forgiving and backwards compatible, and it's awesome. But getting these features that are like go in line with the direction of shipping less JavaScript, right? Allowing HTML to do more, allowing CSS to do more, having a lower reliance on JavaScript is great for the user in so many cases. But then it was also really interesting to think about what are the security concerns around this. And as developers, as developers working on browsers, I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into those considerations than what I actually think about. But it's cool when someone else is sort of taking that ball and running with it, and my website gets better or my applications get better as a result of someone else's work. And then also the discussion or considerations around user experience and how we can make that better. And it was just a cool cross section of different interests for me. So wanted to share it with people and put it out there.
Yeah, and it really does seem like the best possible way to approach something like this, because you could theoretically maybe like click that button with JavaScript and get the camera to pop up, but then you're out of the camera or you're out of the app, right? And you have to physically interact with the camera button to either take a video or take a picture and then get that sent back. And like from a usability perspective, that's just like perfect, because you're not getting prompted with, can I access your camera? And then pop open the camera and then take a picture.
Does clicking on it with JavaScript work? I actually, that would concern me more on a security standpoint, because if I thought I was going somewhere and I end up and I'm on the camera, I may forget how I got to that camera and then take a picture, and suddenly this potentially malicious website has access without me realizing what's going on.
Yeah, so that is a good question. That is not something that I tested, but it was something that kind of came up, or I came across that same idea, right? It could be you trigger it with JavaScript, or it could be you could even visually hide an input and display it as something else and kind of trick a user into clicking something like a cute kitty photo or something. And all of a sudden, without being prompted, hey, this website's trying to access your camera, is that okay? They just go straight into the camera. And even then, The security concern, there is a path where you leak some sensitive information, right? Or I guess a hacker can like get to sensitive information, and that is maybe somehow hiding the fact that there's a file input there with the camera, and then somehow getting the user to actively click that input, or maybe trigger it with JavaScript, and then the camera is going to open and take up the entire screen. So a user has to notice that or not notice it, or either
So
notice
I think
it and like click the
key
capture
is,
button.
Do they have to make an action, right? Even
Yes.
if I'm interacting with something that doesn't look like an input, if I'm interacting with a website and it opens my camera, like I was just aware I'm doing a thing and it happened. The bigger concern for me is like I'm loading a website, maybe it's slow, I'm not paying attention, I get distracted, I come back and my camera's open. Do I have that mental awareness of this is related to this website, right? So if it's even if it's like triggered via JavaScript, but it has to happen inside an event handler that's handling a user event, I'm not concerned. If it's triggerable by passive, JavaScript without having an event handler involved, I feel like there's danger there.
I'm really tempted to just throw up a quick code pen and hack it out really quick. I'm sure. Yeah, I could do that in like, I don't know, a minute.
Even that has me like wondering about other potential things, because it is like the trick here is that it's not giving you any kind of indicator or any kind of, it's not asking for any permissions, right?
No.
It doesn't, like if I wanted to get your GPS location, I would have to ask, like if my app wanted to do that, it would have to ask and prompt like, hey, do you want to allow this app to see your location? It would say, okay, and give me that. Does the camera do some kind of stripping of like the EXIF, like GPS data of where the photo was taken or anything like that?
Yeah.
Ooh,
so
that's a really good idea.
Yeah, and this is where the conversation gets really interesting to me, because as we put on our security hats and think of like what is the worst way to take advantage of this, I keep coming back to this opinion that if you're so concerned about it, then you should have the same concerns for the default file picker, right? Because all of these scenarios that we're talking about, either triggering it with JavaScript or hiding it behind some thing that the user thinks they're clicking that is different, it all still requires another action on the user's side that they actually either take the photo or select a file from their device. And maybe they walk away and forget what website they're on or something like that. And those concerns would still be there in both scenarios. So I think if you're going to be on the side of the fence that says this is a security concern that I'm not okay with, then that still has to apply to a default file picker, because fundamentally the input gets access to the same file, whether it's received directly from the camera or from
I'm not quite convinced by this argument, and I'm going to push back on this way.
No, let's do it. Let's go.
If I'm picking a file, and I look away, and I come back, and I'm in that file picker interface, and I'm like, I don't remember. Why am I picking a file? I know I'm picking a file, so I'm like, why? I'm going to ask the question, why am I picking a file? And I'll cancel out so I can look, and then restart it, right? People use the camera for all sorts of stuff. Right? If it's just opening my native camera, I don't have that same immediate reaction of why am I picking a file? This is like picking a file is a relatively unusual action for me as a user. It's going to trigger a question. Taking a picture, well, for me, it's relatively unusual too. I don't take a lot of pictures, but I know people who take like hundreds of pictures a day, right? It is not always, subject to that same level of scrutiny. And I think it's very likely to end up in an automatic, wait, I have my camera open. Great, let me take a picture of something.
But also like the iPhones at least have a feature where you can set like an accessibility thing where if I double tap on the back of my phone, it opens the camera app. And so all the time I'm accidentally opening my camera app.
Yeah. I think
it's not related.
One more thing before we go even further on that.
Let's go.
Related to Nick's geolocation concern, which I think is a real one. If I'm doing that from a file picker, there is no guarantee that the timing of the files I'm picking are anywhere related to where I am right at this moment. But if you're getting it from the camera live, you're pretty confident that this is where this user is right now.
That was going to be my pushback too, is that it takes away that, or it gives you that assumption that it is a very extremely recent indicator of your location. Whereas I could pick a file from 10 years ago and put that up there.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. I don't know. I don't think that HTML file inputs would strip EXIF data, and therefore that metadata would probably also be sent along the way. So yeah, that was a good point that didn't come up. But KBall, to your point of like the camera being open and me interacting with the website, opening the camera, looking away or getting distracted, forgetting what I was taking a photo of or that I was on this application. I think that the file or the camera from the input is slightly different, at least in my case, than the camera that I use to take a photo.
Okay.
So
that helps a lot.
Yeah, there would be a very clear delineation between what I'm looking at to take a photo and the camera that comes in the file picker.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
One other quick question on this. You mentioned that this only works on mobile devices. What's the fallback behavior if you have an input with this mode in a desktop or laptop browser?
Yeah, so this is good news. HTML is awesome with fallbacks. It just falls back to a file input. So you would just get that file picker UI that you would be used to. And this also brings up an interesting topic, which was why isn't it supported in desktops, right? Like laptops have a front-facing camera that it could work just the same. And I think the answer, this was a TIL, so it wasn't something that I had been doing years of research on, and I don't work with browser manufacturers or anything like that. But I think the answer would, the HTML working group has sort of the spec on how this could work in a browser, and that would require that the camera or like the photo taking mechanism would rely on being built into sort of either the UI of the browser or built into the file picking application or something like that. So it may be something that can happen in the future, but I think that it's just on mobile devices, it's a lot more prepared for that sort of behavior. Yeah, and it'd be great to talk to someone at Chrome or Firefox or Safari to get some idea, or even the working group, and see what the idea is on moving forward on that.
All right, let's break here real quick. And I want to come back. We just ran long on that, but I thought maybe we could just have a shorter segment for the third one where we kind of talk about the what you wanted to talk about, Austin, which was the kind of the impact of having something go viral like that.
Sure.
Dig into that a little bit. Cool. Anyone need a break, or are we ready to roll?
No, we're good. And I just realized that I forgot to do my backup or start my backup recording at the beginning of this session.
I did the same thing, or I forgot until halfway through the first segment, and I'm hoping that Riverside is working good. It seems to be.
It seems to be.
I'm going to say before we jump on,
Yeah.
KBall, I really appreciate and admire your perspectives that you bring to a lot of these shows. Longtime listener. Things like that. I was like, yeah, okay, that is. And Nick, like you caught it too, the timing of the photo. It's cool stuff. I actually wish I would have done that on the show or said that on the show, but it'd be too weird after the transition.
It's okay. We don't like it praising.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love, people that can think about other stuff. It's cool.
Cool. All right. Let's, I'll kick us off into that and kind of lead into it. All right. So Austin, in the last segment, we talked about that awesome TIL that you had about capturing video or images or microphone just from HTML. I do think it's really cool. And as like a user, I really want that convenience without having a bunch of extra pop-ups. But yeah, it remains to be seen whether it could be exploited in some weird way. I'm sure Frost is already working on figuring out a way to do that. But as you mentioned, this went viral. It went to the top of Hacker News and has gotten a lot of attention. And so I thought in the last section that we could talk about what that's like having something, a cool TIL like that you learned and wrote about go viral on big sites across the internet. What's it like?
Oh, it's great. I'm getting so many. My phone has been ringing off the hook. I'm getting sponsor deals with Nike, and there's a biopic coming out soon.
Yeah.
Lots
of theoretical internet dollars.
Yeah. No, it's cool. So it was kind of interesting because it started as, I don't even know where I came across it. It was a legitimate like TIL. I think I was on MDN and was like, what capture attribute? What the heck is that? And read about it. Was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And threw it into a code pen and played around with it. And then I think I just tweeted about it because, I like putting out content there that's just like helpful to people and interesting. And then from that tweet, so I do on the Akamai Dev channel, we are trying to give back a lot of what we like to call like community karma and really invest into developer education and just giving back to the community. So I took this, and every week or every other week, I think I have a video series called Web Dev Office Hours where I just talk about stuff like this. They're like 5-minute long videos, a little bit more produced than live streams, but things that I learned or things, little tips and tricks and stuff. So I threw this on there. That became a video, and then I also decided to write a blog post about it. And I put it out there, and I thought it was interesting. But it's funny that this actually, I'm used to writing like very long form content with 3,000 words, and this was something that was like, cool, let me copy the YouTube captions and just like throw it into a blog post, fix it up and do whatever. Very low level of effort, but I think it was just a sort of the right combination of being kind of fascinating and practical to people, and also I did work on the title a little bit. I think there's a certain sort of balance of being slightly intriguing, but not giving it all away up front, but also not being clickbaity because you don't want to promise something and not deliver. So I called it something like TIL. You can access the user's camera with HTML, which itself sounds like pretty interesting, right? Like I would click on that. But I really hate those clickbaity, like, bet you didn't know what it is or whatever. So yeah, I wrote that. It was relatively short. It's got the video in it. It kind of just runs through what it is and how it works and what I learned. And then I actually submitted that to Changelog News, and Jared accepted it. And I think at that point, Faraz ended up posting it to Hacker News. And then it just took off, and it ended up on the front page somehow, and which is weird because I had posted it to Hacker News as well, and no one paid attention.
People pay attention to the things Faraz posts.
Yeah, Faraz has clout,
Also, Hacker News is totally random. There's
it is.
Sometimes it'll skyrocket, and sometimes it won't.
Yeah, but it was particularly interesting because someone else shared it, because I didn't know what the heck was going on. So all of a sudden I was getting these server alerts that were like, hey, you've reached like 75% of your resources, 80% of your resources, 90% of your, like 5 minutes apart. And I was like, oh shoot, what the heck is going on? I'm getting DDoSed, which is really ironic working at a company that has like DDoS protection. Cause I've been there not long enough. I haven't
should have gone to a static site.
Well, it is technically like static served from cache. So it didn't go down or anything. But I was still getting resource warnings. But yeah, it was kind of a weird outcome because, the combination of something that I spend so much time and effort on all these other blog posts, and they get like crickets. And then you just like slap this together, throw it on, give it a good name and whatever, and it takes off. And I'm not surprised by that. You hear that story over and over. But it was funny to be on the other end this time. Yeah.
I think while you were not clickbaity with the title, I think the fact that there was controversy around it helps a ton.
Oh, absolutely.
I've had a few Hacker News front pagers back in the day when I was publishing more regularly, and they were usually the ones that people had. There were people with strong opinions on multiple sides, and sometimes I leaned into that and was maybe a little too clickbaity or a little too like opinionated on it. But even when not, the thing that makes it go crazy on Hacker News in particular is like there's people arguing passionately on both sides of something.
Yeah. I wish it would have been one that I shared, because I think that I would have liked to be more aware of the conversation that was going on. Because I shared it on Reddit, and Reddit is just one of the worst places. I mean, it's great, but it's amazing how much effort people will put into being mean. And not even mean in a clever way, just like mean, and just like, really, you're going to waste those keystrokes on.
I've had that experience with Hacker News as well.
Oh, I'm sure. But yeah, I didn't get the traction for me on Hacker News as much as it did for Ross. But I think it was useful to me to receive those, even the criticisms, because I just shared it as something that I learned, and people were like, "Oh, you shouldn't, like, that's actually really bad for security." And I hadn't even considered it at that point, or considered it deeply to the point, or to the level of detail that these people were going into. And it helped me reaffirm some of the discussions that I came to, I was prepared today. And even, KBall, you pointed out some things that didn't come up and are legitimate concerns. And I would love to, talk to browser creators to see their opinion. But there's good sides, even to the naysayers. It just, as long as you're not doubling down on your opinion for the sake of ego, it can help you solidify your position. And some people were a lot more receptive to that as well, and say, "Oh yeah, okay, I get it. Thanks for explaining it." But yeah, Reddit.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's interesting, because it's not even something that you were sharing with like any kind of like ego in the way that you were presenting it. It was just like, oh, it's something cool that I found on MDN. And
Yeah.
like you didn't create it and put it in browsers or anything. Like it's just like sharing something cool, and then there's a bunch of controversy around it. It's interesting. The internet is a wild place.
Yeah. I think that, though, I guess the takeaway here, or a takeaway for any people out there that are creating content, that, if you put time and effort into content, even if it's a post like this that was not something that I really poured my heart out onto, spending a little bit of extra time to get the title right, I think was the big thing, because it also did really well on YouTube. I think
that's the thumbnails. You got to get the thumbnail.
Yeah, gosh, I hate that. I hate that so much. They're so terrible. But the algorithm, the algorithm is a drama llama. It wants that vitriol to spread. But yeah, no, like taking a little bit of extra time to get that title, and I guess if it's YouTube, the thumbnail right also, and make it something that I don't support clickbait, and I think people can smell out clickbait these days, and just like more people are not going for it. But if you can be authentic, but also a little bit intriguing, because I even changed the title. I think originally I had it titled like the HTML capture attribute is rad. And then I changed it to something that was like, a little bit more, spicy and engaging, and like, oh, okay, let's check that out.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
And if users are listening and they want their articles to go viral, it sounds like the lesson is submit them to Changelog News.
Yeah, Changelog has been great. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's really cool. Thank you so much, Austin, for joining us today and sharing this wonderful bit about you, about the HTML capture attribute, and about what it's like going viral on Hacker News. Where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me at austingill.com. That's Gill, G-I-L, just one L. I was born without a second L. It's fine. And I'd also encourage people to reach out to me on Twitter at Hey Austin Gill or Twitch or YouTube. Also, if I can give a shout out to Akamai and Linode, I am not saying this because they are my employer and they pay me, but I will say that there is probably a bias in that because I work there now, I'm able to see behind the curtains and how the sausage is made. And I really think that Akamai is best in class product for CDN, web application, like web security. The edge compute platform is awesome. And Linode has been really great in letting me get in, great user experience, great developer experience, and they have a lot of really cool offerings. So definitely want to give them a shout out.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm a longtime Linode user as well.
Yeah, they're great.
Well, and at least for a long time, changelog was all hosted on Linode. I don't know if that's still true, but it was part of the standard opening spiel, hosted on Linode servers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, cool. Thank you so much, Austin, for joining us. Thank you, KBall, and we'll catch you next week.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
There's not outro music in the media here. I could play the intro again, but it'll get subbed in.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks, Austin. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys. I've been like a huge fan for a long time, so this was a real treat for me.
That's great.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate you coming on and participating in the community and sharing awesome things like this. And I am going to try and catch an upcoming stream, so I'll be on the lookout for that.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to take us off YouTube now.